We welcome the participation of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Colombia, Alvaro Leiva, in today's consultations. We're grateful for the views expressed by the head of the UN Verification Mission in Colombia, Carlos Ruiz Massieu, and also Ivan Shimonovich for his briefing as chair of the Peace-Building Commission. We're sure that for all members of the Council, it was very helpful to hear for the first time in this room the view of a key participant of the peace process, that is the head of the former FARC leadership and leader of the Communist Party, Rodrigo Londoño. The peace-building process in Colombia is a very dynamic one. We see the efforts of Bogota to carry out in full the final peace agreement. We note progress made toward rural reforms, and the UN verification mission was recently called on to observe this, as well as the integration of former combatants. At the same time, one key problem remains ensuring the safety of ex-combatants. There's no doubt that implementation of the peace agreements will be facilitated by extending the mandate of the Commission for Follow-up Verification and Implementation of the peace agreement, as well as the handing down of the first sentences by the SJP, which will soon take place, and the UN will also be observing that. Despite the efforts of the government toward peace, as well as the entire society of Colombia, there's continuing violence in the country. And the vector of violence, however, has changed from fighting between the government and illegal armed groups to armed fighting between the groups as they vie for control over territory and channels for drug trafficking. Besides implementing the FPA, the Colombian government and the international community are now focusing on dialogue with the remaining armed groups, especially the ELN. We are hoping for a rapid agreement to be reached between the government and rebels, especially with regard to a ceasefire during the upcoming negotiations in Cuba. We understand Bogota's desire to strengthen progress and dialogue with the groups by having the UN verification mission verify potential agreements. We hope that the Secretary General will provide the Council with detailed proposals on the possibility of mobilizing the UN for this purpose. When discussing this initiative, all Colombian stakeholders ought to be able to participate given the difficult peace-building situation. An eventual expansion of the mandate of the UN mission would entail a number of additional issues that must be dealt with. It's important not only to verify bilateral truces between government forces and the illegal armed formations, but also separate these competing groups on the ground directly, allowing them to engage in fighting, especially in territories where the state either is entirely absent or does not have effective control. This requires clearly defined recognition by the IAFs that are party to the bilateral truces of the oversight authority of the UN mission, as well as their obligation not to shoot each other. We believe that a separate and very careful analysis is required regarding the UN's contact with criminal groups which are involved in drug trafficking, especially given the potential consequences for the mission's authority. We emphasize that the current multi-vector dialogue ought to be built on the peace agreement of 2016 and in no way should undermine its implementation. Only the full implementation of the FPA can build trust in new participants of the peace process. A number of incidents that took place over the past month, including the suspension of the ceasefire regime with regard to the Clan del Golfo group and the killing by members of the ELN of 9 Colombian soldiers, demonstrates that comprehensive reconciliation in the country will not happen overnight. We're pleased that the current Colombian government recognizes the difficulties it is facing and is prepared to continue its painstaking work despite all of these problems. For its part, Russia, as the permanent member of the Security Council, will continue to provide all possible support to the Colombian peace process and the UN verification mission led by Carlos Ruiz Massieu. Now I resume my function as President of the Council and give the floor to His Excellency, the Foreign Affairs Minister of Colombia, Mr. Alvaro Leiva Duran.